got something else. It's light on the reading, but it has some interesting pictures.
Oh, no. Put that back. That's not for kids.
How do you even walk around with that thing?
Please get rid of it.
Hold your horses. I want to see what all the fuss is about. Why are all these pages stuck together? I'm just fucking with you. Bye-bye, dude!
We interrupt this program to bring you...
All right, everybody, my name is Kevin.
I'm Adam.
And I'm Julie.
And we are the Real Movie Guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Real Review, the series where we review and discuss all your favorite movies and TV shows. And today, we're back to another episode with The Last of Us, Episode 4, Please Hold to My Hand. After abandoning their truck in Kansas City, Joel and Ellie attempt to escape without drawing the attention of a vindictive rebel leader. All right, guys, we had a pretty big hump to get over, I think, now at this point. Episode 3, we all kind of agreed was the best episode to date for the show, blowing our minds, you know, just as far as like storytelling, just what we expected to come from this show. So I feel like any episode going in was going to have a hard time dealing with the aftermath of that.
Agreed.
And I think there is, in some sense. There's some things that are starting to worry me a little bit about the show. But before we get into like some of the more deeper stuff, I want to get your surface reactions here. Adam, how'd you do with this one? What are some of your thoughts?
It definitely feels like it's on a downslope compared to the last episode. It definitely wasn't like, obviously there's more action in this episode, but I don't know, it doesn't feel like it was as, I guess, solid, if you will.
Yeah, I'm getting the feeling of that, which I think there'll be something more we'll talk about with why I'm feeling that way.
Okay.
Julie, what's going on? What are you thinking?
I agree. I mean, it's really hard to follow that high that we had in the last episode being a perfect episode. So it's how you top perfection. The pace, it was kind of weird. It was very slow, but then also very intense at times with those action sequences. But the slowness actually helped, develop Ellie and Joel's relationship, which I'm sure we'll get into. So I definitely have mixed feelings overall.
Right, and I think this is the part where I can start separating, I think, the show from the game a little bit more in this respect, because now that like some of these bigger hurdles have come through, I'm kind of starting to see where they're going with the show, and I can kind of separate the two. So with any adaptation, it's going to be hard, especially with The Last of Us, when you're trying to adapt something which essentially is a point A to point B mission. You have to create stakes, you have to create other characters for situations, other things to happen to interact with the main cast. The Last of Us, there really isn't a big antagonist in the game. Wouldn't you agree, Adam? It's kind of, it's just like the faceless enemy and the elements that they're kind of dealing with throughout most of the game.
Yeah, it's just kind of getting from point A to point B, pretty much, and just dealing with the trials and tribulations that come with getting there.
Right, there's no like head bad guy, right? Like a mini boss or something like that. There's nothing like that like along the way. I mean, maybe there's one that will come up a little bit later if they do that with Ellie, but that's a whole nother discussion for if that happens. But right now, they've introduced a new character. They introduced, and I don't know how I feel about her, Kathleen, played by Melanie Linsky. I'm not feeling this villain for this show. And part of that is I think I've seen it before quite a few times in a lot of different media, especially post-apocalyptic, like we've seen with Walking Dead and things like that. The tough badass, no nonsense, savior of the masses is like, oh, I'm taking no nonsense and I'm going after the good guys. I've kind of seen it before, and you can tell that with the show, and I think, Adam, I think you kind of touched on this, that the writing's seeming a little bit sloppy, because in the beginning, we had this really nice interaction with Ellie and Joel, right, which is, I think, is the core strength of this show, and the game, arguably, too. That is what the whole adventure is going to rely on, to an extent, is that relationship. And when that's on screen, it was great. But as soon as they cut away from it, I got really disinterested pretty quick. How were you feeling about that, Adam?
Yeah, no, that's pretty much exactly what I was feeling too. I just feel that, like, I get why they put a face to this faction, is because I guess in the game, it's it's just
It's
another
ambiguous.
obstacle.
It's ambiguous. It's just not even ambiguous. Maybe it's just like the military or
Right.
the Firefly. Well, that's not
Yeah.
really a spoiler, but anything like there's always an obstacle that they have to overcome, but it never has a name, right?
Yeah. I guess for show purposes, putting a name to it probably makes more sense. I
Yeah,
guess.
I guess to have something to focus your hate on, but at the same time, it just feels kind of cliche a little bit.
I guess my issue is that I know how not permanent this is going to be. Like they're not going to be here much longer. They'll be here for probably the next episode, and that's it.
Right, right. And I don't know, and they're trying to make me care about this new character relatively
Right.
quickly. Like,
Right.
oh, well, she has to protect all these people and she has to, save them, so that's why she has to do all these terrible things. I don't really need you to explain that to me more. I think I
Yeah.
can kind of get that without like just having these people going after Joel and Ellie. I kind of understand why they're already doing it, especially earlier on. They kind of set that up with when Joel and Ellie are talking. Ellie asks Joel like, "Oh, how do you know what that is? And have you done this before?" And he kind of doesn't answer her. What you don't say speaks louder than what you try to say.
Right.
And I don't need like a villain and like another, I guess, the associate, which is funnily played by the Tommy from the video game, which I think
Right.
is very funny and a
I
very
thought that
nice
was so cool.
inclusion. If anything, it's just nice to see Jeffrey Pierce getting work, outside of the video game. But I don't think I need it. So that's where I'm becoming a problem, and I'm kind of seeing how they're starting to tie it in too, which I don't know if I necessarily like either. Julie, I know you didn't seem to be a real big fan of it when we were watching it either.
No, I hate to go back to like the game comparisons, but the fact that it was like just this nameless, really evil in the world, like these people are preying on people happening to travel through the city and taking advantage of them, stealing from them, and then the ultimate goal for them is to kill them here. And their motives seem to still be ambiguous. Because they keep referencing, I'm blanking on the other character who's going to be big in the next episode.
Henry.
Ellie and Joel. Henry, yes. So like she just keeps mentioning, oh, we need to find Henry, or Henry did this, but us as the audience, and because it is now a deviation from the game, we're like, well, maybe that's to build suspense, but I just found myself being more annoyed. Like, well, who's Henry? What did he do? Like, just come out with it, because she seemed so angry about it that I don't know. I just wanted an answer now, and I think we're getting a flashback in the next episode from what I don't know. It just kind of like disjointed storytelling. I don't know.
It's tough because as someone who's played the game, we already have extensive knowledge. Like Adam has said too, like we kind of know like they're not going to be here very long, and the journey's going to continue on. So anything that happens isn't permanent. What do you think of that change, Adam? Because I think that seems like a drastic change, because in the game it's more of just Joel and Ellie kind of run into Henry and Sam, and they go their merry way and have their little side quests there. They weren't really connected to anyone. Do you like that they changed that? Do you think it was a necessary change?
I just think that it's going to become too much, because there's a lot of obviously they're trying to tell a lot of stories. They're trying to flesh out more characters, trying to give a lot of people more presence in the show or in this universe.
Right.
I just don't want it to become to the point where it's just too much.
Well, you run into the problem too. What are you taking out and replacing versus what are you adding? And we talked about that a little bit earlier. With episode 3 was the perfect example. What they took out was superior with what they replaced it with. Like, we love that story that they told of Frank and and Bill. Like, that was a great addition, and that made it even better, the experience. Is this going to make the experience better? I don't know if I'm seeing that pathway, especially if Henry's at odds with this other group and they're looking for him, and then Joel and Ellie are kind of just stuck in the middle. I think in a way, for me, The Last of Us kind of works better, and this is just based on what we've seen so far. Kind of like the almost self-contained episodes of their journey seem a little bit better. Like, maybe there's like an overall theme or an overall like experience, like an emotion that we're supposed to go through in each episode. With of course you have some kind of line going through it, but when the show's trying to rely on this maybe like stronger connection between the two episodes, it seems like it's weaker. Are you getting that kind of vibe, Adam? Or
Yeah, it just doesn't hit as well. I feel it's like I said, they're trying to do so much without actually focusing on what's really the show is supposed to be about.
Right, and I'm starting to see too that this is almost a 2-part episode from what I gather, based on that it's the same director coming back for the next episode, which I thought that was kind of strange. Usually they don't do that, but at the same time, it kind of makes sense based on where they kind of left off at the end of this episode, that this is kind of like a 2-parter almost. And, I don't know if that's a good choice to slap that in the middle of your show, especially when there's a lot to go, and I don't know how much time they have left. I think, 8 episodes is going to be the complete count for the series. Is it 8 or 10?
I thought it was 9.
Is it 9? Make one of those numbers, which when you really think about it, there's not much time left, and there's a lot I want them to kind of do and to go with. But Julie, I want to talk to you. What did you think were some of the better things? Because the Joel and Ellie relationship, that was definitely the highlight. Every scene that they had together was definitely a highlight for me in this episode.
Yeah, I loved Ellie finding the book of puns. I just thought that was so great. And I love when she tells, I can't remember the joke, but Joel's trying to not show her that he's laughing. And then finally goes, that's so stupid. And, shows her that, she finally got him. I thought that was a cute kind of little back and forth that was sprinkled throughout the whole episode. And you can see now Ellie's kind of come out and she's really working to try and get him to open up. And because she's already kind of connected to him and she wants that reciprocated in a way. She's like, oh, well, don't worry. The pun book's coming back. And until she finally kind of breaks him that way. And then even, what was it? Stuff goes down in the city and that firefight that they have and her kind of feeling helpless and she's separated by that wall between Joel and the fight and her finally jumping up and intervening. And, it really, I don't know, pushed the relationship to a new level.
Yeah, which that has been the scene I've been waiting to talk about for quite a bit. It didn't go down the way I thought it was going to. And in some ways, I thought it was a little bit less impactful than it should have been. So just to give you an idea that Joel is struggling to fight a group of these survivor people that are coming after them, and the one has Joel on the ropes, and Ellie, she actually stole a gun in the previous episode, and so she had that on her, and she goes up and she shoots the guy that's attacking Joel, and Joel, it saves him essentially, and he's able to take over the situation. Adam, in the game, it's drastically different, and even the fallout, I think, is drastically different. What did you think of the execution of it in this episode?
I think at this point we are getting like 2 different Joels.
Yeah.
Because you're getting this, one that is more sympathetic, and this other one that's, I guess they're trying to look at after Ellie in 2 different ways, it seems.
Right, and I think that is like the interpretation that we're getting is someone that's more, it's complicated. And the thing that bothered me maybe about it the most, if anything, I would poke at it this episode, was it didn't feel as violent as it did in the game. In the game, it was a very violent scene to where Joel's being choked like underwater in like a puddle, and then Ellie comes and shoots him, and it's almost like, he's mad at first, but then it's like irrelevant. They're really quiet. They travel and they're real quiet. They don't talk for a while, and then they kind of have their conversation about it. And the execution didn't feel as impactful for me. In a way, though, maybe it does do something, like you said, a little bit different, because Joel finally opens up to Ellie, and I think Ellie kind of sees that maybe he does care, so it kind of is like a turning point in their relationship.
I think the big difference with the game, or the way that the game handles that situation, is that we don't know that Ellie is there.
Right.
And she comes in like the hero, and at first we're like, oh my god, who did that? And sure enough, it was Ellie.
Right.
I think it's just kind of like, it's a different tone.
Yeah, no, it's a very different experience, and the way they play with it, I don't know if this Joel is a different Joel. I think that's how we have to leave it at, and maybe that's where we have to stop leaving the comparisons at that point, because they are going to be different characters. But it's tough too, because Neil Druckmann, he's kind of doing this to himself in some ways, because he's taking the scenes that we celebrate him saying, oh, I'm taking a scene from the video game, I'm putting it in the show and making it so wonderful. But at the same time, every time you do that, we're going to compare the two. It's going to happen. So when you do it, you just have to make sure it works. And in this instance, I don't think it was my favorite scene. It was one I was really hyped for and I really looked forward to, just because I feel like it is such a big, impactful moment in their relationship. It didn't come across, for me, unfortunately. But that's not to say it was terrible, just it wasn't the same. It felt like a little bit less for me. But at least they're getting their relationship, their chemistry is very well right now. The comedy seems to be balanced fairly well. That's one thing I know The Last of Us would have to contend with. You don't want to be too like Marvel Cinematic Universe humor, like cracking jokes in the serious situations. They're not doing that yet. Adam, I know you probably missed the one line that everyone was talking about. I saw online as when Joel hits the guy with the car, and he goes to Ellie. Ellie's like, "Oh my god, you hit him with the car," and he's like, "Oh, he'll be okay." People were really upset with that line not being in the show, which a different Joel, like you said, I think that's a different Joel saying that line.
Yeah,
it would have been funny though. I'm not gonna lie, I would have chuckled because Pedro Pascal, he knows comedy very well, so it's nice to see.
He's got some good comedic timing in the show.
Yeah,
definitely.
we saw him on SNL a little bit. We know he's got the jokes there, so he's doing a good job, right? And everyone is. It's just the matter of how they're going to tell this story. They hinted at a bigger event that's going to be coming next episode. Next episode's going to be a lot of action. And I just hope, they're taking the time to introduce these new, like, very short-timed antagonists. I hope it's worth it. Because right now, I feel like it's slowing the pacing down, which, ironically, the episode that really didn't have Joel and Ellie felt like it moved faster than this episode that had more Joel and Ellie. So I don't know if that's just writing. I'm not too sure what that means.
And the other episode had less action as well.
Right, and I feel like
Yeah.
It's tough when you fall into these confines. The show ultimately is a zombie apocalypse story to some extent. Like, the writers can say whatever they want, but at the end of the day, it is. And we've seen it done before, so you have to differentiate yourself, which it did last episode, but now we're kind of coming back to some of the hallmarks of that genre, and that's where it's going to be tough for, I think, the show to stand out. But with that being said, I think we're ready to give our final scores. I'm going to give The Last of Us Episode 4, Please Hold to My Hand, an 8 out of 10.
I know what it's like. First time that you hurt someone like that. If you, well, I'm not good at this.
Yeah, you really aren't.
I mean, it was my fault. You shouldn't have had to. And I'm sorry.
This one didn't land for me as much as the other episodes, and I have to kind of rank it the lowest, unfortunately. And then again, an 8's a really good score. I don't want to say like, oh no, it's an 8, that's the end of the world. It's not. It's just a low point right now. And I think my score will be, I'll be able to judge it better when the next episode comes out. Because again, I truly feel like this is a 2-part situation that we're getting right now. And, unfortunately, this was just setting up. So as long as the setup was worth it, next episode should be even higher once I take a look at it when it comes out. So that's where I stand with it. Adam, what do you feel with this episode?
I am going to give The Last of Us Episode 4 an 8 out of 10 as well.
Joe,
What?
can I ask you a serious question?
Yeah.
Why did the Scarecrow get an award?
Because he was outstanding in his field?
You dick! Did you read this?
No. I'll go to sleep.
It didn't hit as well as the other episodes. It's unfortunate that we have to give this episode as low of a score as that. But as you said, there's a lot of good things that do come out of this episode, which it's still definitely worth a watch.
Yeah, I think, reorganization is key, and they've proven that they've been able to do it. I just hope they don't slip up going forward. Because, again, not a bad episode. We're still having a good time, but there's just some things that are, the cracks are starting to show in the perfection there. So we can only tell. Julie, where do you stand?
I'm going to give The Last of Us Episode 4 an 8 out of 10 as well.
Joe, did you know diarrhea is hereditary?
What?
Yeah. It runs in your genes.
That is so goddamn stupid.
You laughed,
I
motherfucker.
didn't laugh.
Yes, you did.
Jesus, I'm losing it.
You're losing it big time.
Really just the inconsistent pacing, antagonists that I have no connection to or don't care anything about, brought the score down for me. However, the high points of more Ellie and Joel and seeing their relationship blossom more is, the highlight of the episode.
Right, and I think that's all we all loved. I mean, again, the connection between those two characters was phenomenal this whole episode, and that's where the heart is of this show.
Yeah.
So as long as the show doesn't forget that and worry about, introducing other stories into it, that's what's going to make or break it for us, I think. So I don't know. We'll see where this show goes. We can't wait to talk to you in the next episode. Thank you all so much for joining us for this episode of The Real Review. My name's Kevin. That guy's Adam. She's Julie. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. We'll catch you next time.
Bye.
Bye.
If you guys like what you've seen here today, consider giving this video a like and leaving your thoughts in the comments below. If you want to stay up to date with everything Real Movie Guys related, make sure to hit that subscribe button and check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And don't forget, all you audio listeners at home, we are available on many podcasting platforms. Just search The Real Movie Guys, you should pop right up. Thank you again all so much for joining us on this episode of The Real Review. We are The Real Movie Guys. Real guys, real movies, real thoughts. Catch you next time.